thanks everybody for joining the August community call. Stephanie, I'm taking the meeting from Stephanie for this month. My name is Emily. I'm another product manager on the Bicep team. So we'll start off as usual with our release updates. In exciting news, V0.37 has been released, and we have an exciting program today of some demos of some of our newly released features. So I'll go over a few of the highlights from the release, but not every point. So to start off with, we have great news for folks who have been asking for some more support on the model context protocol side, looking for Bicep tools. So what this is for folks who aren't familiar with MCP is it's essentially feeding context into the models that you might have access to in your coding editor, in this case for VS Code, that help the models write more informed and hopefully better Bicep code. So it's an AI support feature, and we are releasing 3 tools in experimental mode that should hopefully support your Bicep usage. And I'll be speaking a little bit more about those later on in the call. As our second update, I'm actually going to have Samir, hand this to Samir later on in the call. We're going to get a full demo, but as a headline, we have some great new work that should simplify the C# authoring experience for local deploy extensions. So we actually also have a special demo today from one of our community members who's already made use of this new support for developing extensions. So we're going to see the full package today, which is exciting. And the third item here, we have a GA release for external input function, which is exciting. It's useful for tools that require the ability to inject values at deployment time. And this feature is primarily designed for internal usage, but feel free to ask clarifying questions. We have docs coming on Microsoft Learn, so keep an eye out in the next few weeks for those. Next up, we have simplified publishing process with type discovery through the gRPC interface. And this edition is for local deploy. So it would require an experimental flag. And I have a link for that I can share in the chat. We've also added the format capability to Bicep JSON RPC, which enables programmatic formatting of Bicep files through JSON RPC interface. Again, I have a link for that I can share. And then for the 6th update here, if Kyle is in the call, I'm going to hand it to you in 1 minute to speak about the model extension configs experimental feature. Kyle, are you here? And do you want to speak on that for a brief minute?
Yeah, I can do that.
Thanks. Now is a good time if you're able.
Yeah, I am. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see that? And sorry if there's background noise, like this conveyed.
Kyle, if you could just zoom in a little bit.
A little bit more. Okay. Is that better?
Looks good to me. Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. So I'm Kyle. I'm the developer working on Stacks extensibility support, so managing extensible resources with deployment stacks. And with that has come some new features for Bicep. We have, so the big change, if anyone is familiar with extensions as they are now, right now, today, you declare these in your Bicep file. You specify which extension you're going to use, the configuration with it for it, an alias, and then your resources for that extension. And in today's setup, the way that you parameterize this, configuration is given through inline values or deployment parameters. And with this new experimental flag, module config, module extension configs, we're moving the configuration aspect of deployment extensions to the parameter file level. So it'll be, you can specify your configuration for extensions in your Bicep params file, or as you know, a separate input to a Bicep module. So it's separate from parameters, and this is mainly due to some additional requirements for Stack's extensibility support in handling user secrets. So here's just a very toy example I have here of this new syntax and setup. I'm using a existing Kubernetes extension. In my main Bicep file, I have a default configuration. So there's two properties that go for this configuration. There's the Kubernetes config and the namespace. They're both required. So here we have the ability to specify default values for configuration in the template level. And you would, declare your resources down here as you would today. Here in the parameters file, you can see I parameterized the config. So we're getting a secret. Sorry, we're getting a secret, and you can mix, match, override things as needed. Here, there's some flexibility that this new syntax offers. Here is just the variant for a module. So I just have a really simple module here with just the extension. You can see there's no default configuration, so we're required to specify the whole configuration here. You get errors. But for example, if you do something like this, oops. You see that adapts to the changes there. You can also do some inheritance for your extension configs. So to accomplish that today, you would have a parameter in your deployment file, and then you pass the parameter to a module. The same concept exists for extension configs. You can use the extension symbol as a way to get the configuration. So here I'm doing some simple inheritance where I have, I want to use the same Kubernetes config for my module. So I'm just referencing the config of this extension, and I'm getting that value here. And of course, you can do other things like, maybe you want to get a secret from a key vault. You can do that here. And as far as excuse me, the Stack's extensibility support goes, we do have some additional limitations that we are implementing here. So if you try to, if an extension supports secure properties, and if you try to inline a value or provide some type of basically a non-key vault reference. If you provide something that's not a key vault reference, we have a linter rule that's basically an opt-in. So it's an info by default to just inform you that this setup is not compatible with Stack's extensibility. And you can choose, depending on your needs, if you want to make this an error, if you're using deployment stacks for all your deployments, or you can just make it a warning, you can keep it as info, or you can just turn it off completely. But if you do see this pop up, likely your stack will, or if you try to deploy this as a deployment stack, it will not succeed in validation. Well, that's about it.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Kyle. If folks have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Okay, now we'll move on to a GA announcement, and I will share my screen.
Hey folks, yeah, so really excited to announce that we're now GA for the Microsoft Graph Bicep types, or its alternate name. We're really stoked that we're able to get this release out to you. I know a number of folks have been asking when this is going to be GA, and it's been a little bit of a journey to get here. We had hoped to get here a little earlier, but we're here now, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you know, how it's being used, and getting some more feedback on the more things that you want to see within our new Graph Bicep types. Can you skip on this slide for me, Emily, please? Thanks. Just a quick recap of the things we've added since public preview. Some of the highlights here: we made changes to our relationship modeling, which had originally had some restrictions during public preview, and now through a template you're able to add as many members to a relationship. Examples would be group members or group owners. And it now also supports a semantic that says whether you're doing an update or replacement as part of the deployment for that relationship. And other things, we now have full cloud sovereign cloud support. We also fixed the issue we had where the only supported clients that could do deployments were AZ CLI and AZ PowerShell. Now you can create your own client to go ahead and deploy Graph Bicep types with the user or interactive flow. And we actually have a sample that shows how to do that as well on our GitHub site. And yeah, I think that's probably enough for now. Can you go to the next slide, please, Emily? So I wanted to say a big thank you to the Microsoft Graph team who have been working on this. So this is Jason and Eric, and one of our newer members, Tawfiq, as well as Adam. And a massive shout out to the Bicep team who were supporting us through this journey. This wouldn't have been even close to possible without them, especially without the extensibility framework. So you know, thank you very much for all the help that you provided. And last but not least, all the folks who have been on this journey with us from private preview through to GA, you know, providing us with some really great feedback, filing issues, and steering us in the right direction to hopefully what will be a heavily used feature. And don't stop now. So if you want to request a new feature or a new Graph Bicep type, go ahead to our the issues section on our GitHub repo, and please go ahead and file new requests. We're eager to hear more from you. So again, thank you. It's been an amazing journey.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Dan. Next up, Tate is going to share out on his work on onlyIfNotExists.
Thanks. Yeah, so the onlyIfNotExists decorator has been released as an experimental feature for the past few months. We're beginning to do investigations on moving that to GA. And as part of that, we'd just like to send out a request for feedback. So please feel free to add anything, your experiences, to either the GitHub issue or create new Bicep issues with any feedback or comments on this, because that would help. Thanks.
Great. If anybody has questions on onlyIfNotExists, feel free to put them in the chat and we can address them there. We'll also have live Q&A at the end. Okay, Samir, I think you're going to share out on some of the work that you've been contributing to for the new Bicep extension authoring experience.
Hey, thanks. My name is Samir, and I'm a software architect here at Microsoft, and I've had the pleasure of working with Bicep on some tooling, and specifically for the extension framework. What we focused on was making the experience as frictionless for everybody as possible, with the goal in mind that when authoring an extension, it feels very much like you're just writing another C# application. So we made several changes that you can see in the GitHub Quick Start guide that make the authoring experience a much more straightforward process. You get to register your resources. You can do dependency injection. The debugging process also changes fairly straightforward now, to the point where you just use some gRPC client. You send a request and you can see what your extension is doing. And everything from the authoring experience is just focused on the handlers and types. There isn't much plumbing to be done. The Quick Start guide kind of goes over that plumbing part. But outside of that, we think it's at a good point where it makes for a smooth experience for developers to start writing their own extensions. And then when you're publishing, the experience has slightly changed, but I think that goes with a different PR that is discussed with the gRPC thing. And then a final change we made was type discovery for your extension. So instead of having to write separate code to generate your type definition file, you simply write your C# classes, and during the extension process, as it's being published, the framework will capture your declarations, generate it, pass it to Bicep, and Bicep will have a nice, smooth experience and understand the types. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Samir. Again, if we have any questions, we're doing okay on time. So if there's any questions now about that experience, I think it's a big win for contributing to extensions. So we can give a minute here and see if there's any questions. Okay, looks like there's no immediate questions in the chat unless I'm missing any, but feel free to post in there and we can address throughout the rest of the call. Okay, we have a community demo next, actually, which is building on the work from the Bicep authoring extension experience. So I'd love to hand it over to a community member from the community lab on a proposed Bicep Databricks extension.
Yes,
Take it
good
away.
afternoon. Yeah. I can instantly add, I guess, to the things because I started from that quick start actually, and I don't know if I need to thank Samir now for the quick start or Anthony. I think Anthony was the author on it, but that's where I started because, yeah, I was facing some challenges currently at the Rabobank where I'm employed. And we primarily use Bicep to, of course, deploy Azure resources. But when it comes to Azure Databricks, there was actually no. There's a hand up, Emily.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to start with just a brief introduction of yourself? I know you
Oh,
just mentioned,
sorry. Yeah, I always instantly go in the technical stuff. Yeah, my name is Gijs. I'm a cloud engineer working at the Rabobank, and also a contributor to the DSC project. So actually, it was either going to be this or a DSC resource, quite honestly. Coming back to the story, when you deploy an Azure Databricks instance, I think everybody probably will know that most configurations like creating storage credentials, doing things in Unity, or creating clusters, for example, is not possible in Bicep. And I think there was a request back in 2023 to already have some extension, but it was not there yet. So I thought, well, let's look at the quick start guide, and that's actually where I started. So it's a really quick demo because I currently don't have that much resources. My plan is to borrow some code probably from Terraform and port over the things that they did with the Databricks provider. But currently, I have the compute to create a cluster, something in the workspace to create secrets or directories. And actually, I also created some automation around it because I tend to forget the commands that needs to be executed. But what this does is actually, well, what Samir also explained, make it more smoother to actually compile it like an executable, and in the end, an extension itself, which you can use in your Bicep code. So this is the end result of it. Always takes a little bit longer.
Can you zoom in just a bit, please?
Yeah. That better?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Thanks.
Cool. So if the extension eventually is available, the things that you have to do, and that's also in the guide, is of course turn on the experimental futures. Currently, I'm pointing towards a Bicep, the container registry, and that's where I also publish the extension. But of course, when you're doing local development, you can simply point it to the local file itself. And to eventually test out if the extension is working, I also created a bunch of tests around it. So if I execute a test one, what it will do is it will create a cluster behind the scenes and also a working directory. So I don't have a cluster currently sitting on my Azure Databricks instance, but hopefully when the tests run, then you will see the cluster being spinned up, and it will also create a directory. Currently, the repository is in private mode, but I'm actually planning to make it open public, but there is some code that I still want to change because I know that there was also a library developed, which is, I think, also in the Azure repository from Microsoft itself. So I rather want to use that one because there is now a lot of logic that I have created myself, and I'm not a C# developer by heart. So if we now go back to the Azure Databricks instance, you can see that the cluster is spawned up. That's it, actually. Any questions?
I guess I'm curious what your experience was like with the new library. Like anything that
Pretty
worked
good.
well.
Well, pretty good actually. The only thing that I struggled with is that I think not all the types are supported. For example, I think a dictionary is not allowed. At least it didn't allow me to compile it. So some slight limitations there, but it was manageable.
Awesome, thank you. Well, it was very cool to see the demo. Thank you for sharing that.
Nice. All right, cool.
James, what are our next steps for this effort, if anything? Can folks hear me?
Come again, Alex?
What are your next steps for this effort, if anything?
Well, I'm planning to at least hopefully solve the issue from 2023 and support the Unity related resources that you can create. I already made a joke to Emily and saying like, well, of course it will be very nice if I can just simply donate it to the Bicep team. But then I'm probably also getting Sydney on my back with the support thingy. But yeah, that are actually my current ideas about it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Oh, there's another hand raised. Go ahead.
So with the GA of the graph integration, is it right? Am I right in thinking I could, with a Bicep deployment now, create a new user in my tenant and then apply that user as a identity that has access to a key vault secret further down in the deployment?
Not yet. So currently we don't support creating a user through Graph Bicep. It's a read-only resource at the moment.
Right.
And that was somewhat intentional because I think I guess a lot of identity and access management administrators might be a little cautious about templates creating thousands of users. So we may well add it in the future, but it wasn't high on the list for us to create a writable Bicep type.
So we basically have to do it another way first, wait for the user to be there, and then we can then reference that user.
Yes, exactly. Now, if that's a problem for you, Ryan, please feel free to go ahead and.
I'd just say I'd like to be able to do it all in one template. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, we'll stick with the current methods.
Okay, but please feel free to request an update to that resource type to support creation.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So just a continuation on the previous question. So if the user already, or actually the identity already exists in the graph database, and I'm creating a new resource, am I still able to create new role assignments based on the results of Bicep graph queries?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
Yeah, so one actual example is that some of the identities are existing in every tenant with the same name, but with different object IDs or principal IDs, right? An example would be the managed container identity that is actually creating AKS clusters for me. And sometimes I would like to assign permission for that identity on certain resources like networks, storage accounts, so that the newly created AKS cluster actually can access them. And up until now, I was not able to do that from Bicep because in every tenant, they have a different ID under the same name. So I only know the name, but not the ID. And for that, I would like to use this graph query from Bicep to get the actual ID based on the name, and then use that ID to assign it the role assignment.
when you say name, are you talking about the user principal name or?
Yes.
Yeah, so you should be able to use Graph Bicep to do that. So the read-only user Bicep type allows you to, in effect, look up a user by user principal name, and then from that you can get its ID, and from there you can probably assign it to you can assign various roles and permissions to it.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Okay, any further questions or comments on this one? Okay, then we'll move on to the next one. Just going to reshare my screen. So next up, we have a short announcement on the Bicep MCP tools that we've been working on. So I will share with you how you can view the tools and then what the 3 tools are that we've implemented to begin with. I can also answer any questions you might have about the tools or about why we integrated them. So I will switch screens here. And I'll start with just a brief overview, and then from there, I'll show you an example in VS Code. So here we have our documentation for the tools, but I just want to highlight here that they are in experimental still, these tools, and the tools here, you should not need to know the names to call them directly like you would a function, but it can be helpful to understand what kind of context the models are being provided. So one tool we have lists all of the Azure resource types for a specific provider. So from your prompt, so what you type into the model box, and I'll show what that looks like in just a minute, it determines which specific provider space you are hoping to develop a Bicep file or a Bicep resource for. And then internally, it lists all of the corresponding resource types to kind of narrow the search space. And so the goal of this is to get a more specific set of resources so that the model could then choose the one that you most likely mean. And then from there, the expected behavior is that it would then go get the schema for that resource. And so what that means is it would ground or base the Bicep that it's generating based on the official Bicep schema for that resource. So this is in an effort to avoid something that you might have heard of called hallucination, which is where a model seems to make something up that doesn't really correspond to fact. And so by providing it the factual schemas, we would hope that the Bicep would be closer to factual Bicep. And as a reminder, this is all experimental, and there's much that we still don't know about models and these agent tools. But this is where we're really hoping to get your feedback if these 2 tools improve the quality of the Bicep code that's being created. And then finally, we have a last tool here called Get Bicep Best Practices. And so this is our effort to create not just syntactically correct Bicep, which these first 2 are trying to tackle, where the Bicep is in the format you would expect, but also what might be referred to as semantically correct Bicep, which is where the Bicep means what it's supposed to mean and is crafted in a way that you would expect a good quality Bicep file done by an advanced developer to create. So the kinds of best practices you would like to see there. And this is actually something we're hoping to get direct community feedback on. So at the bottom of these docs here, which I'll drop in the chat, you can see here that We actually started a Bicep best practices GitHub issue where this is not just for the MCP tool. This is kind of a general collection of best practices, a way to kind of crowdsource all of your wisdom from the community and make sure that we, whether we're writing public documentation or trying to improve the model context tools or some other use case, that when we promote best practices, it's not just our internal team's perspective, but also how it's being used out there in the wild on some pretty large projects. So that's the overview of the tools themselves and why we've done them. Now I'm just gonna, before I hop over to VS Code to show you an example, I'll show you how you would use these tools yourself. So for now, while we're in experimental, the tools are only available to VS Code Bicep extension users. And we may in the future explore kind of more diverse or robust hosting options. But the point of putting these tools out in experimental first is that we want your feedback on the tools themselves rather than like the exact hosting method, though we're very open to that as well. But that's why we're kind of focusing on the tools for now and why they're only available in VS Code extension for now. So when you open up your VS Code window, you should see a Copilot button up in the top right corner. And if you don't see this, you may be on an old version of VS Code or you may not have enabled Copilot. So be sure to look into that. And then once you've opened your Copilot window, you can select from the drop-down agent mode here. So there'll be other options like ask mode, but you want to make sure you're in agent mode and that you've opened a .bicep file within your window. And then you've selected agent mode. Alex, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to hop in for a minute? Do you have something to add?
Nope, that was an accident, so thank you for catching it.
Yeah, no worries. So then once you've selected agent mode, you'll see here that it's named MCP Server Bicep Preview, but this will be experimental. And this was from our nightly build when we were trying out this feature, but I'll be updating this today to be experimental. And when you click on the tools button, so at the bottom of your agent window, that's where you should be able to see all of your MCP servers that you've opted into, and then their corresponding tools with their descriptions. And you want to make sure these are selected for the servers that you want to enable. And then here you'll see my prompt. And for this, I'll switch into the VS Code window to show you that. Okay, so here you'll see I'm in GitHub Copilot. I'm in agent mode, and I've prompted it to create a Bicep file that deploys a storage account using Bicep best practices. And so you'll see here that the model then says, I'll help you create a Bicep file that deploys a storage account following Azure best practices. And then here you'll see that it ran our get Bicep best practices tool within the server. And the input was nothing for this tool. You can click to expand. But the output was all of the rules that we've predefined to be the best practices. And again, we want your feedback as to how you would define best practices. But you can see some of the rules that it's applying here. So avoid sending the name field or module statements, for example. And then without further prompting, it goes to get the schema for the storage account resource to ensure I use the correct properties. And here it gets the Azure type schema, taking the input of the model determines the name here, so Microsoft.storage/storage accounts, and selects an API version. You can also prompt it to promote it to choose a specific API version that would then influence the input here. Right now, the model is just inferring an API version. And then you can see the output, which is what you might normally go look up in documentation, is the schema for a storage account, which clearly has more properties and descriptions than you actually need. And so then you can see here that it goes to actually author that Bicep file, only including kind of what it predicts or what it determines to be the necessary or bare minimum properties. And this is something that you can kind of keep prompting on or iterating on if these are not the properties that you want to include or the values you want to include. The way that I like to think about these tools is if you instruct them with the same level of specificity that you would a good developer who is new to the space, you'll get the best results. So you can assume technical proficiency, you can assume some knowledge of Azure resources. But yes, as someone in the chat says, better prompts certainly yield better results. Yeah, you can see here my prompt was pretty basic. I just said storage account, but you might want to specify how you would like the storage account to fit into your broader infrastructure or the kind of properties you'd want it to have. Okay, great. Any questions on this one? I can stop sharing so I can see the chat. And I want to give a huge shout out to Anthony's work on this. Also Gary and Dante. They were the engineering minds behind this one. And able to get these tools done in just a matter of weeks. They're still pretty fresh, but we're all really excited to start gathering your feedback on them. So please create issues on GitHub to share your feedback or reach out to me directly. Yeah, and I see, thanks, Alex, for addressing the comment on the right location for hosting Bicep MCP tools and kind of a cohesive Azure experience. Just to speak to that briefly, yes, these tools are kind of in their own spot right now in the Bicep VS Code extension. But as much as you can, try to focus on these as tools for now and giving feedback on the tools. And then we're going to use that feedback to hopefully bring them to the broader Azure ecosystem as we all work out how and what that will look like. And yes, that's why these are an experimental for now, so we can just get fast feedback. Like all experimental tools, assume that they may change at any time, be improved at any time, be modified, etc. And thanks, Anthony, for addressing some common limitation or troubleshooting that you might run into. I've also covered that in the docs, but yes, while these are experimental, there are some hoops to kind of jump through to try them out. And I will share the GitHub documentation page right now. I just couldn't share the link while I was presenting. Awesome. Okay, well, happy Bicep vibe coding, and please help us make these better as you use them, and let us know where they serve you and where they don't. Okay, and I'll go back to the presentation. And skip ahead here to the requested updates. So here we have a requested update from, I believe, Gabriel. And I think we have someone in the call ready to address it. On the extensibility feature. The question here is, are there any plans to provide documentation on the Bicep extensibility feature? And I think Anthony was ready to answer, and he's answered in chat that we're happy to take suggestions. Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry,
This was not the answer.
Totally different question I was answering. I'm just reading through this question. So this is a is it Gabriel? Do we know if Gabriel's on the call?
Yeah, Gabriel, if you're here, do you want to add some more context or maybe ask it live? He may not have been able to join, which might have been why he posted online.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think if you're looking to author based on the Bicep type library that we have available. I think we do have a gap in documentation there. So I think definitely feels like something we can improve. With the new library for authoring a local extension, I think a lot of that you don't have to worry about anymore if you're using C#, because you can just author C# model classes rather than just authoring the type files themselves. I think initially kind of we designed that format to not really be something that anyone would have to write or think about. So probably not keen to document the actual underlying format. We prefer to just give people tools for operating with it. But I think it's a good call out as like something we can improve. Plans to create an official extension registry, not currently. But I think if we see a lot of interest in people creating extensions, then it definitely feels like something we can look at. And then 3, will we ever be able to create extensions that can run on Azure? This is definitely something I'm interested in looking at. I think with the work that Samir's done on this type library, you know, you can, as an author of an extension, you can really just think about the mapping of like your type definitions in Bicep to whatever API you're talking to. And so that is kind of, in theory, that's something that we could run server side if we wanted to. So I think that definitely opens doors for us being able to do something like this, but we need to kind of think through the design. I think the biggest concern being hosting untrusted code in a multi-tenanted environment. We need to find a safe way to do that. But it is something we're also exploring. Hopefully that answered the questions.
And then I was just going to add one more thing on number 1. I know, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, if this is not relevant, but I think Marcin is experimenting right now with how to use type spec as the format for describing Bicep types for new extensions, which is a very well documented way of describing types now. I can post a link to the type spec project for those that are unfamiliar with it. But that may be a more longer term route for doing all of your Bicep type information.
Yeah, that's a good call out. That's a good point. Marcin, maybe in the next community call, you can present.
Yeah, probably actually. I should have a working like a working prototype at least by then.
Awesome. Something to look forward to. Great. Thanks for addressing those, Anthony and Alex. Okay, so that's the end of our formal programming. Friendly reminder, we really appreciate your engagement. So follow us on our social media, where we remind folks about the community call and share other exciting updates. And we'll end with Q&A as usual. So I know we've been active throughout, but if there's any further questions, feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. Our team will stay on and address any questions that come up.
I see there's a question from Stan in the chat. Any expected date for any type? Is that we're referring to the any type specifically? I think this might be a question for Johnny if you're on the call.
Yeah,
I
Johnny
am.
knows about that.
Yeah, we're waiting on an ARM rollout for that, so it may make it into the next release, but it may be the one after that. Just depends on how fast it becomes available in all regions.
Thanks, Johnny.
And then there's also a follow-up about the float type as well. I wasn't sure if that's also included here, Johnny.
A float would count as an any, so it's included in that sense, but I think there's a deeper level of support for floats that we still want to work on.
Okay, good to know.
Great, thanks for the question. We have another question in the chat about any goals to eventually get parity with resource type coverage for intrograph that Terraform Azure read provider covers today.
Well, the simple answer is yes. I'd love to see that, and I'm sure the rest of the graph team would love to see that. The challenge we have is that onboarding to graph bicep types requires changes to be made by the API owner. Oh, I see Eric has just responded to that, so I'll leave you to read Eric's response. He's probably going to say the same thing I would have done. So.
And Eric, for folks watching the recording, I know it's quite a detailed and nuanced response there, but do you have a brief overview you could share live?
I mean, yes. So in order to onboard to graph bicep types, there are different folks who own the APIs that are part of Microsoft Graph, and they need to make certain changes so that their APIs are compatible with templates and infrastructure as code. So the notion of having client provided keys for your resources is not something that is typically done in Microsoft Graph. But that's something that, in infrastructure as code is typically done, especially when you have your configuration in a file. And also ensuring that you have repeatability in being able to deploy those resources again and again. And so there are certain things that these API owners need to do in order to make sure that they conform. Convincing them of the value of doing that work is sometimes a little challenging and problematic. There are a lot of competing things that are going on. So the only thing that we can do is continue to relay customer asks around supporting various entra types in Bicep. And at some point, hopefully, this becomes important enough for those teams to go ahead and do that work. So we're tracking the issues around new types. Go ahead and either upvote existing new type requests or add new ones in there, and hopefully we can get those prioritized among the API owners.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan, for sharing context there. Appreciate it. Great. Any other questions that folks want to ask live?
There was a question from Josh about the status of the short-circuiting issue. Johnny, I think this is another one for you. Oh, I see you've just responded.
Yeah, but basically, if you reach out to us on GitHub, that should be rolled out everywhere. It may fall back to the older short-circuiting logic, but if you get us a correlation ID, we can almost always figure out why that's happening. And it may be something we've already fixed, or it may be something we need to address.
Great. Thanks, Johnny. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions, but if I've missed you and you have a burning question, please +1 it in the chat, like ping it or raise your hand. But if not, that's the end of our call for today. So thanks everybody who demoed and presented out on our work. And thank you for coming, all the community members. Don't be a stranger over GitHub and socials in the next month, and we'll see you for the next community call. Okay, I think we're ready to kick it off. So